My name is Roehl Sybing. I'm an assistant professor at Toshishi University in Kyoto, Japan. Today we're going to play with ChatGPT to put together kind of a framework for a future study that we might want to do in the social sciences. This is totally unscripted. Don't have any idea what ChatGPT is going to spit out, but hopefully this will be a little bit fun. And I want to put together this video because I think many doctoral students, they kind of get stuck about what they want to do for their research paper in terms of something that is novel, original, but how do they go about doing it? And the traditional way is to create a literature review, synthesize the research among the collected literature, and try to identify a research gap that can be addressed in a future study. So the question that we want to answer is, to what extent can ChatGPT help us with that? So what I'm going to do is give ChatGPT 3 different articles that I've written. I don't want to toot my own horn, but these are published studies that I've put in journals over the last 5 years. And let me just show you what these are. So we'll start with this one. This article is from 2019, which I wrote about on an ethnographic study of a writing classroom in the US. And it's been published in the Journal of Scholarship and Teaching and Learning. This this research is for teaching and learning in general education contexts at university level in the United States. But the later 2 articles that I've written, the first one is examining dialogic opportunities, which you'll find in Learning, Culture, and Social Interaction. This is focused on a Japanese EFL classroom, English as a foreign language. And the idea is for teachers to identify how they can take advantage of dialogue with students in order to further learning outcomes. And the third one, which was published in 2022, which is dialogic validation. Basically, how does a teacher in a language classroom exhibit, or practice responsivity towards what students are saying, and or contributing to classroom dialogue, so that way students can feel empowered to contribute further when they might otherwise be hesitant to speak in a foreign language. So and this speaks to my larger broader research area on English as a foreign language, in terms of creating dialogue between teachers and students to bridge differences of culture and language. And I want to see if ChatGPT can identify the kind of research gaps in this literature, and to see what future research can be conducted. So, if you were creating a literature review, I would probably say, use ChatGPT or another tool to literature that is relevant to your research area. Now, if you are a doctoral student, probably you don't have research papers that are published in order to identify the research gap of your own research. But the literature review that you're creating will consist of studies by key scholars or recent scholars that are relevant to the research questions that you want to address. So what I've done is gone ahead and uploaded the 3, or at least attached the 3 different studies that we just saw over here. Let's add in a prompt. I have attached 3 different papers that I have published on dialogic classroom interaction. And evaluate these 3 papers and identify opportunities for future research. So let's see what happens. We'll take a moment or two. And hopefully it will have read the papers. We'll see what it says. So just looking at the first one, it says dialogic validation. What could a researcher do next, building on the theoretical developments in this paper? For example, investigating the long-term effects of dialogic validation on marginalized learners, academic and social outcomes, exploring the scalability of the dialogic validation framework. It's a little bit abstract for me, but I do like the first one about investigating long-term effects of dialogic validation on marginalized learners, especially with learners who are at the socioeconomic margins, students who are struggling with the language of the classroom, students who don't have the technological advantages that other students do. That seems to be that is a active research area. It's just a matter of how do we specifically apply this theory of dialogic validation onto such learners, and that's different from what I've been doing. This was based on an ethnographic study in a Japanese university. So students are more or less affluent in this particular context, and so you know the concept of marginalization is not as profound as it would be in other contexts. So this might be a good research opportunity if I have access to such a context. Let's go ahead and look at the second one about, and of course contributions. It basically summarizes what the important parts of the paper are, but we're looking at opportunities. Analyze how rapport building strategies can be adapted for large lecture classrooms, and that's an important area of study because dialogue is hard to accomplish in even a small classroom, let alone a lecture size classroom or online learning environments. I think all of us who taught during the lockdown years encountered the problems or the challenges of teaching on Zoom or Teams. Let's see what else is there. Developing metrics or tools to quantitatively assess. Yeah, if you're a quantitative researcher, then theories that come from qualitative research are a good place to explore new ways to measure concepts or phenomena. That is if you're quantitative in nature. Let's go ahead to the third one about dialogic opportunities, expanding the study of dialogic opportunities to STEM and other non-language disciplines. Right, my research is mostly focused on language education rather than the STEM fields. Developing professional development programs. That's the end product of a lot of dialogic classroom research has been about how do we develop teacher education programs, but that's not my immediate field, and exploring how technology can assist teachers for sure. So here are some themes that could be useful. For example, comparative studies across different educational systems. I always want to see how language education in Japan would contrast with other language education contexts in other countries. A lot of research in dialogic education has been conducted in Finland and in the UK. And I'm always curious about how language education, what language education looks like in European countries. Digital tools. I wish I was technologically savvy in terms of using technology in research, but this might be a good research area. But just for the sake of argument, let's go with the last one: equity and inclusion. Explore how these frameworks impact traditionally underserved student populations, such as low-income or ESL students. Now EFL is a different game than ESL. ESL is in language education in the States to allow students for whom English is not a first language to be able to, understand English and socialize into English-speaking contexts. So let's focus on this one, equity and inclusion. I always want to say thanks at the beginning of a ChatGPT prompt to follow up. Let's focus on the equity and inclusion theme. Let's see. I'll propose a research study that might be conducted in a university or college context. So, yeah, let's do that. Let's see what happens. Or I'm wondering if we need to be more specific. No, but it does remember about dialogic practices in higher education, dialogic validation, rapport building, dialogic opportunities. Sure. And then it will give me research questions. How do dialogic teaching practices impact the participation and academic outcomes of students from marginalized backgrounds? What specific dialogic practices are most effective in fostering a sense of belonging and inclusivity? How do students perceive the role of dialogic interaction addressing inequities in classroom dynamics? Okay, so we have 3 good research questions here based on the data that we've given it, the 3 papers. And it does have a theoretical framework with a mixed methods design. Interesting. Especially with different disciplines, for example, the humanities or STEM. And mixed methods would include classroom observations, student surveys, teacher interviews, focus groups. This is an ambitious study. Let's see if we can bring this down. Let's see. Adjust this proposal. Again, this would be if you were a doctoral student and you wanted to plan a research study. One of the pitfalls that doctoral students might fall into is that they might, for their dissertation research, they might want to plan an ambitious study that is longitudinal in nature that could take years to do. And you can do that. It's totally okay if you have the means and if you have the motivation to go the distance on such an ambitious study. But if we wanted to adjust this down, let's say adjust this proposal so that it is feasible for doctoral students in the social sciences to do within a reasonable amount of time. Let's see. See if I can see what happens. And so it will. One of my pet peeves about ChatGPT is that it will often use the words that you will give it in the prompt. So when I say adjust this proposal, it will come out with adjusted proposal. Now I wouldn't recommend copying and pasting this proposal and making it your own without some significant massaging. Plagiarism in the use of generative AI is a big concern. So I don't want people to get into the habit of copying and pasting what they see from ChatGPT. I'm more interested in whether you use ChatGPT as a kind of a assistant, so, as someone who as a resource that can give you some guidance that you can use when creating your own proposal. But which is one of the pitfalls is using the copied language from the prompt. So be careful with that. But the scope and feasibility, instead of 4 classrooms, it's down to 1 to 2 classrooms. So we take a case study approach instead of a mixed methods design, I believe. So this would be 3 semesters. Okay. I was able to do my dissertation with my research within 2 months, the data collection part at least. So I would, if your program if your program is okay with it, and if your goals for your dissertation align with it, then I would probably try to shoot for a research agenda for your dissertation that could be anywhere between 6 months to a year. If you want to go longer, that's okay. If you want to go shorter, it depends on the kind of data, the richness of the data that you're able to collect. But this can give me a good timeline. And then the data analysis. Okay, it's still mixed methods in terms of qualitative and quantitative analysis. with expected outcomes as well. This is an important component of qualitative research, where you don't propose a hypothesis as you would in the physical or material sciences, but you have an expected outcome based on your knowledge of the field and based on what you have read from the literature. So what do we expect if we conduct this study? Where are we conducting the study? In a classroom with student-centered teaching methods. Where we get that is another question. But we expect that we can identify dialogic practices, we can get insights into students' perceptions because we're doing interviews. Are we collecting it? Yeah. Observations, interviews, and questionnaires, sure. And then actionable recommendations, especially if you're in a field like education. You are not just studying it for theoretical insight. You are doing this research because you want to improve on the field of teaching and learning. And so, yeah, this gives me a good little backbone, framework, skeleton, whatever the word is, for a good research proposal. What I do want to get into are these two research questions, so let's read these research questions. How do dialogic teaching practices impact the classroom engagement of students from diverse cultural, linguistic, and socioeconomic backgrounds? And what dialogic practices are perceived by students to foster inclusivity and equity in higher education classrooms? So, to me, these, just intuitively, these sound like really good research questions, but to what extent are these research questions explored? It's quite possible because I've only attached 3 different papers to ChatGPT's prompt, and it has its own body of training data from which it can rely on. But to what extent is that representative of the entire field that I am looking to do research in? So I want to interrogate a little bit more. So let's ask ChatGPT, to what extent have these research questions already been explored by existing research? Let's do that. And let's see. They have been explored in some depth, but opportunities remain for significant contributions. That's an important one, right? Are these contributions not yet defined, and especially with equity and inclusion and dialogic practices? For example, it will break down the first research question. So what is the existing research? Taking research from Alexander and Mercer and Howe. These are important scholars in dialogic interaction. Gay and Montero. Now, what I'm thinking is that these sources are based on the sources that I have cited in these 3 papers. So, for example, Montero, is it here in validation? Let's see if I could search Montero. It's not in here, or in here. There we go. It does exist in my in one of my papers. For sure, it was in my dissertation. And then I know Banks. Gay is a researcher on critically responsive pedagogy. Let me see if no, it's not here. Yes, it is. Culturally responsive teaching, and not just the scholar, but the year. So at this point, it is only using the literature that I have used so far. Snell and Levstein, Argoti, all of these are in my 3 papers. Let's see if I can refine. Let's see if I can critically dive a little bit deeper into it. Would you like to refine? Looks good so far. But I notice that the sources that you use already exist in the papers I've attached. Can you suggest other literature not in these papers that might have already addressed these research questions. Let's see what happens. And now we'll search the web, because I don't think it was searching the web before. So now student participation and identity, inclusive pedagogy and STEM, because a lot of my research was not based on STEM research. And so that might be an important thing to look at, student-instructor relationships and so on. So Lepstein and Snell again, Ginsberg and Wladkowski, excuse me. So given all of these, let's see if I can, taking these news sources into consideration, to what extent have the research questions above already been addressed, and what new research opportunities remain? So, research questions you propose have been addressed to varying degrees, leaving important opportunities for further exploration. That's the important part. If the research question has been fully explored by existing research, there's no point in doing it. But we go back to the first research question and the remaining opportunities. Well, when we're writing our paper, it will be important to focus on the extent of the existing research, and especially when you're designing your theoretical lens for your data collection and analysis. The discussion of existing research will be important, but let's focus on the remaining opportunities. There's a gap in higher education research addressing the intersection of dialogic practices and engagement of marginalized students. So we're still on this kick on marginalized students, those at the socioeconomic margins, those who are lacking in the necessary linguistic resources, etc. Case studies in specific disciplines. So yeah, that's so we might want to adjust our studies to disciplines, subject matter disciplines that have not yet been explored. And intersectional analysis after affect engagement in dialogic classrooms, sure. So the third one, now we get into the granular analysis of practices, and yeah, this is one of my concerns about classroom research, even the research that uses a discourse analysis at the line level, at the interaction level, that the analysis may not be granular enough. How do you isolate specific actions that students perceive as most effective? Yeah, what are those practices? Marginalized student voices. This kind of affirms my thinking about the field, as well as what other scholars such as Lepstein and Segal and Snell talk about students who are, even in dialogue, they are still silenced because they might be parroting what the teacher is saying is expert knowledge. Longitudinal insights, that's a weakness in my research because I basically do qualitative research in a short term, like a month, 2 months, and so on. What are the emerging research opportunities, role of technology, comparative studies, instructor perspectives, equity metrics. So let's dive into the last one and see if we can propose a study. So we did have the initial study above, but let's see if we can do one more. Thanks. Now let's propose a new study on equity metrics based on the scholarship discussed so far. Be sure to employ theoretical knowledge about dialogic practices in classroom settings, and devise a study that is feasible for doctoral students to complete within a year. So equity metrics to me sounds quantitative in nature. Develop tools to measure the impact. So as someone who focuses on qualitative, this will be new and novel for me. Let's see what happens. So here's our proposed study with a new one, designing equity metrics, with the research questions that focused on, again, dialogic teaching, culturally responsive pedagogy, and equity pedagogy, which is what Banks focuses on. Again, we go back to a mixed methods approach, which is fine because this study will look for quantitative or indicators or indicators that we can measure. So identifying practices such as classroom observations, focus groups, semi-structured interviews, engagement metrics, outcome metrics, and so on. So yeah, I guess this would be useful if you are looking to create new measurements for classroom research. This mixed method study seems ambitious, even for a time frame within a year, because you're pursuing both qualitative and quantitative components. So here is our feasibility based on the scope with some expected outcomes, such as a set of equity metrics, insights into how dialogic practices foster or hinder equity in diverse settings, and practical recommendations as well. So yeah, sounds good. I would like to, I wouldn't be opposed to this kind of study. I think this would be interesting to look at. A couple of things that would be useful to think about when using ChatGPT, because we're going to wrap up. I would, during this era of during the early stages of the use of generative AI, I would probably be hesitant to copy and paste even small parts of this proposal into a document that you would be writing on your own. I at least for now, I stress the importance of using ChatGPT for inspiration rather than for reference. As best as possible, use what's produced here in your own words. And more importantly, make sure that you validate all of the sources that are provided in this proposal. So, for example, it might suggest to you Alexander, Gay, and Banks. Now, if you are bringing in articles and into a ChatGPT prompt so that it can take it into consideration, it may be looking at the reference list, and it may be looking at other proposals. Let's see, maybe looking at other studies such as these listed here. Make sure that you look for it yourself. Make sure that those sources actually exist, and because scholars have gotten in trouble even within the last 2 years for citing sources that ChatGPT has provided but don't exist. Simply asking ChatGPT for the DOI or the link is not sufficient, because it will make up those links as well. The important thing here is that it can give you a good head start about what to look for, where to look, who to look up, and what kind of research would be useful for your research agenda. So I think this little discussion has been useful. I hope this will be something that you might want to take into consideration when deciding what to do for your research agenda. And tell me what you think about this. Leave a comment, and as always, hit like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And hopefully I'll see you in another episode of DocWork. Thank you.